Hello, everyone. Welcome again to our intermission webinar. We are so glad you are here and joining us. We have Summer Forlenza with us again today. Hi, Summer.
Hi.
Hi, so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Summer is a mental health therapist and educator, and she's been with us before. So please go check out her other webinars on our YouTube channel. And today we're going to be talking about navigating helplessness and that feeling of despair, because there's a lot going on out there, isn't there?
Yes. Yeah, Samantha and I were talking just briefly before we started about how this is a very relevant topic for a lot of folks. It's also a very lengthy topic, so I'm going to do my best to get through it in the amount of time we have. I can't wait to discuss this at the end if there's any folks who are, here and want to have some comments or questions. But we got a lot to get through, so I think we'll just jump in and get it started.
Perfect. All right, I'll see you in a bit.
See you in a bit. So today we're going to talk about embracing the human experience, navigating helplessness and despair in unprecedented times. Long title, but we got this. So before we jump into the content, let me introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Summer Forlenza. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in California. I have a master's in clinical psychology from Pepperdine University, and I have been in practice since 2017 in a whole bunch of different contexts. I love doing therapy, but I also really love educating folks about mental health and about some of the things that I work with folks in therapy, teaching that to folks who might not have access to therapy, just something I really love to do. So one thing that I think is really important to start off with this topic is just to recognize that helplessness and despair, the things that we're feeling, are universal parts of the human experience. I really believe that every person who has come before us has experienced this. And there's also certainly times in history where that feeling gets really intensified. And I would say that we are in one of those right now, where so many of us are looking at the monumental challenges around us and trying to figure out, is there hope for the future? What power can I possibly have to affect some change? We are not the first people to feel like this, and actually for centuries, all throughout history and different cultures, people have been coming up with coping mechanisms to deal with the sense of powerlessness and despair that can happen. So a few examples of this is we can look at Eastern meditation and philosophy, ancient Greek and Roman Stoicism, and then more close to our home, indigenous wisdom and the connection to nature. These are all ways that people throughout history have coped with that feeling of feeling helpless, feeling despair. I loved this quote. I have a couple of quotes I want to share with you all throughout this. This says, "You drown not by falling into the river, but by staying submerged in it." And that is a part of the theme we're going to talk about in addressing this topic, is we are all going to fall into that river of feeling helpless, of feeling despair. But the trick is not staying submerged in it. Sometimes a little easier said than done, but I hope that this is a helpful way to start. Helplessness and despair, I want to invite you to consider that these actually start in the body. And let me tell you a little bit more about why. So when we are faced with a stressor or a threat of some kind, your body has a few options in its natural defense response, ways to respond to that threat. So we can fight the threat off. We can, if there's the classic example we use in therapy land is, if you're in a bush and there's a tiger walking by, how are you going to deal with that? Option, you might fight that tiger off, get a big stick, see what you can do to defend yourself. Flight, you might run away, see how fast you can book it and get away from that tiger. Or freeze, you might get really quiet and really still so that hopefully the tiger walks by and it doesn't see you. So fight, flight, and freeze are some of our body's natural ways of defending us when we are exposed to a threat. There's actually a fourth option as well. So let's say fight, flight, freeze doesn't work. You couldn't fight it off, you couldn't run away, and it actually did notice you. And that fourth option is a shutdown response. And this is what the body does when we're faced with an imminent threat and the body does not think, the body and the brain are like, okay, I don't think we're going to get out of this one. I think this tiger is going to get us. So it puts us into a shutdown defensive mechanism and mode. And what shutdown feels like in today's world, we're not facing tigers, most of us, I hope, but we are facing lots of threats that we feel we can't escape. And so that shutdown response is going to feel like apathy, a lack of motivation. A lot of depression symptoms are really similar to the shutdown response in the body, numbness and emptiness, right? These all serve an important function because a shutdown body feels less pain. And that's the function of this defense, is that it wants to dull the pain that you might experience when you can't escape that threat. Your brain and body are really working together to try to keep you safe. And that works really well in the short term. So if the tiger does get you, it is helpful to feel less pain and be numbed out. But it's not very helpful when the threats that we're facing are chronic or continuous, which a lot of us are feeling these days, right? That there's just a constant barrage of these threats that we can't fight off, run away from, or hide from. And so a lot of us might find ourselves slipping into that shutdown mode in the body. So when our body is in shutdown mode, we're going to talk about lots of techniques today, but I want you to start by what we would say is calming your nervous system. So your nervous system is the part of your body that mobilizes you into fight, flight, freeze, or shut down when you're under a threat. It takes in information from your environment and then translates that into action subconsciously. You don't have to control any of that. It just does it. So one of the things that I will do with folks in therapy is we will work on helping their nervous system connect to a sense of safety or calm so that you can move out of those defense mechanisms and into the opposite, which is rest and digest. So fight, flight on one side, rest and digest on the other. And there's a couple of ways that we can do this. So one is shaking, and this might sound and feel kind of silly. A lot of these things actually do. But we'll actually see animals do this in the wild. For example, if like gazelles are being chased by a cheetah, let's say they actually get out of there and that cheetah doesn't get them. They ran away enough. They escape. A lot of times what those gazelles will do is they will shake their body. And that helps their nervous system to kind of move all those stress hormones and chemicals out of the body and come back to a place of calm. So we can do the same thing in our body. What this often will look like, you can do as small as shaking your hands like this. If you're feeling up to it, you can kind of shake your entire body. I like to encourage people to think of like noodle arms. So your body is loose and you're just shaking it. You can do this with music if it feels a little too silly to do in silence. And sometimes that can be very helpful. Maybe like Shake It Off, Taylor Swift. Any Swift fans out there? That could be a good song to do that too. Just an option. Another option that we have, and we'll do this very briefly together right now, is progressive muscle relaxation. So progressive muscle relaxation essentially is when we tense parts of the body and then relax them. And we'll do that progressive throughout the entire body. And what that does is it helps those muscles to relax individually. Like I said, we're going to practice just briefly together, but this is also very available on YouTube. If you go on YouTube and you search progressive muscle relaxation, you're going to find a lot of options of videos that you can follow along with that will kind of prompt you through it. But we'll do it really briefly together right now, just on the arms and the shoulders. So what that's going to look like, we'll start with our hands. We're going to make fists with our hands, and you're going to clench your fists tight, and you're also going to kind of clench your biceps, so as if you're trying to be strong. So clench, clench, clench. And hopefully other folks are doing this with me. Hold that tight. Give it another few seconds. And then on a next exhale, just let your arms noodle and get really relaxed and just relax all those muscles. Let's do that in the shoulder area. We're going to squeeze the shoulders up towards the ears. Squeeze, 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 and hold. Give it a few seconds, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And then you're going to drop those shoulders, let them totally relax. So that is another option to help calm that nervous system when you're in a shutdown mode. Two more quick options we're going to talk about. One is the butterfly hug. This one, you're gonna cross your arms over your chest and you're gonna tap back and forth like this. If it feels good, you can also sway side to side as you do this. This is using something called bilateral stimulation, which is a fancy word to say that we're touching one side of the body and then the other, which has been shown to naturally soothe the body. So this might be a nice option for you as well. Last one that we'll talk about right now is box breathing. So box breathing, I want you to imagine that you're going to trace a box in front of you with your hands. And when you inhale, you'll go up. When you hold, you'll go to the side. When you exhale, you'll go down and then hold to the side. So we're going to inhale for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, and hold for 4. All right, let's do one round together. Here we go. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Good. So those are some of the options you have to work with your body if you find yourself in that shutdown mode. You also might orient to the present. So one of the ways we can help our nervous system regulate is to not be thinking about or being aware of the threats that are not actually in our immediate vicinity, that might be in the future, or that might be something that we're thinking about that might be happening, and instead get really present where we are, especially if you are in a place that feels safe for you. So you might do this by feeling your feet on the floor, putting them on the floor, and really feeling that you are in that room, grounded on the floor. You might use what we call the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, which I see I've put 2 2s there, but it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That is looking around your room and seeing 5 things you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste in your mouth. It might sometimes be helpful to keep things like I always have gum with me and things like that to give that taste sensation. That's just using your senses to get really into the present moment. You can also do a little body scan, and that is exactly what it sounds like. It's just scanning through your body and noticing how the body feels, maybe noticing if there's tension or tightness, if there's any stretching or movement that might feel good. That is an option. And then 4, if you don't want to do all of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or if you find that taste and smell are most helpful, you can utilize those. So you might have oils or perfumes or candles that smell good and soothing to you. You might have things that taste really good. Coffee is kind of grounding for me, so I like to have my coffee around. Anything like that also can help you orient to the present. And remember that all of this is to help to counteract that shutdown response that can happen in the body, and it's what I often encourage folks to start with. All right, so we've worked with the body. I've given you a couple of options to handle that. Let's talk about some other practical tips to manage despair in the world we live in today. So Viktor Frankl is a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning that most of us therapists have read. And he has this quote that says, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." The first thing I want you to think about is maintaining balance and considering self-care as one of the bedrocks of your well-being. When I talk about self-care, I want to also say that you can have people in your community support you with these things. This isn't something you have to do all alone or totally by yourself. You can ask for support from the people around you in getting some of these needs met. And my definition of self-care is knowing and meeting your needs, okay? So some of those needs are gonna be eating enough. Actually, a lot of people don't eat enough. They will like skip breakfast or skip meals and then overeat to the point of feeling sick later. So you wanna eat enough throughout the day. You want to move your body, sleep enough. You want to do things for fun. Please ask people for support with this. Go on walks with people, schedule meal times with people, go to fun activities with people you love. These are all options. These are not the things that are necessarily going to fix everything, but they are the foundation of a lot of your well-being. And so it's a lot of times a place that I want to start to make sure that your foundation is as solid as we can get it with where you're at. Something to also be keeping in mind is that your brain skews negative. This is actually one of the genius ways that our brain has helped us to survive. One of the reasons why our species is so dominant is we have this negativity bias. And what that means is that if we have 5 great things happen and 1 bad thing happen, we're going to remember that 1 bad thing, right? Let's go back to like evolutionary times. If we eat 5 delicious berries and 1 poisonous berry, our brain is going to remember the poisonous one, what it looked like, tasted like, smelled like, where it was, because that's really important for us to survive. So your brain is going to do all the work for you in remembering bad stuff. You don't really have to try that hard to remember bad things that have happened to you, scary situations, things like that. What that means for us living in this world where we're seeing and hearing a lot of bad things is that we need to be intentional about noting what is good. Our brain is not going to do that for us. It will remember what's bad. It is not going to remember what's good for you. So there's 2 things I think about in intentionally noting what is going well or what is good. One is a gratitude practice. So you can have this be a daily part of your routine. Some people like to start or end their day by listing 5 things they're grateful for. Other times you can just take a moment and pause and say, wow, I'm so grateful that I get to do work like this. This is really dope and it means a lot to me. And I'm really grateful this is happening. Or wow, I'm so grateful that I have this awesome, really cute dog who sleeps on the floor next to me while I'm working. I am so lucky to have that. You also can consider building awareness in good moments. So that just looks like when something good is happening, when you're at a meal with friends or family, when you're on a beautiful walk, when you're cozy in your bed, just taking a moment to be like, wow, this is happening right now and this is good. One of the things I'll sometimes say to clients, and that I did myself when I've gone through hard times in my life, is when things were okay or when they weren't bad, I would look around and I would say, okay, well, this right now doesn't suck. This doesn't suck. This is good. And just really even saying out loud, noticing that this is good. Those are things that can help our brain to note what's good because it's going to remember all the bad stuff for you. You don't have to try for that. Another thing that we can do when we are working through helplessness, despair, and a lot of times I like to start with some of the other stuff because it helps us to feel more calm and present, but then it's time for us to start thinking about taking action. And that just means finding what brings you meaning. This can be as simple as feeding the birds in your backyard. It can be as complex as organizing an entire nonprofit or volunteer organization, or it can be somewhere in between. A lot of times what brings us meaning are things that help other people around us, that bring beauty to the world, that help us feel present, just figuring out like what makes your life meaningful. Maybe it's relationships with your kids or family members. Maybe it's creating art. You want to find your why. Like, what is it that brings meaning? Hard times are always going to come. All humans have felt helpless and have felt a sense of, and I think many of us now anyways, are feeling a lot of despair about what's happening. And so what we can do is try to be present with what is and say, what can I do with what I have that feels good or that feels meaningful? Friedrich Nietzsche says, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. And that is similar to that. That's, in that theme of finding what matters to you and spending time doing that. I also, as we're talking about all of this, I think it's really important to mention that another piece of coping with this is allowing those feelings to exist. Because sometimes if we try to run from them very quickly, or we try to push them down or regulate our nervous system out of them, it doesn't actually work very well if we're just trying to suppress those feelings. So I also think it's important to make space to recognize, I feel overwhelmed. I feel helpless. I feel afraid. You might talk about this with people you love. You might write about this. You might meditate on this. Just allowing that reality to exist, I think is actually really important, because this is a scary time to be a person. And the last several years have been really hard on a lot of people. And it makes sense that you might feel overwhelmed and helpless and afraid at times. So the trick is to not stay in the feelings forever. We can feel them, we can be with them as they are with us, allow them presence, and then bring ourselves back with intention and with purpose. So, wow, I feel really afraid. I feel really helpless. Okay, now I'm going to cook a really delicious meal and share it with my friends, and I'm going to be there for that, right? So we can feel the feelings and then come back to the present and be with what is in front of us. But there is, I think, in my opinion, the most important thing that I think humans have done throughout all of history that has helped us cope with these feelings, and you actually heard me referencing it a lot as we've been talking, is to connect with other people and to have healthy relationships with the people that you love and the people who love you. The most powerful tool that we have to resist helplessness and defeat is building meaningful relationships with the people in our lives. That is an amazing way to find meaning, to find purpose, to find presence, is to be connected with the people around us and the people who love us. So if any of you have seen the show The Good Place, it's one of my personal favorites. I just rewatched it. So let me kind of set you up for this clip that we're about to watch. So this is the gang. It's a bunch of characters who we've been following for many seasons. This man right here who's on the screen, his name is Chidi, and he has just been given access to looking at a lot of time, like 300 years in one go, to try and figure out this answer, the solution to this problem they are all facing. And I just thought this was a beautiful description of what the answer is. So let's watch this together.
Welcome back.
Is he all right? Did you break him?
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. Hey, so for the past 300 years, have I been super annoying?
Oh, no.
Nope. No, I wouldn't say no.
Annoying.
Well,
Yes.
thank you, all of you, for everything that you've done for me. You are wonderful people.
Yeah, man, that's great. But listen, we have like 1 hour to create an entirely new afterlife and also save all of humanity. And we were wondering if you could do your Cheaty thing and find us the answer.
Oh, well, Eleanor, this kind of thing doesn't have just one answer. There might be 800. There could be 0. Who knows? You know, the journey is the destination, right? Let's get to work. Can you give me 1 second? Hey, Janet, can I have my note, please?
If you know that you wrote a note, then you know what it says.
I do, but I'd still like to see it again, please. I think it might be some of the best writing I've ever done.
Okay. So what he kind of recognizes there, and he's got access to a lot of wisdom, is that we can't solve all the problems around us, but the people that we share our world with and that we share our space with are actually like the answer to some of the problems that we face. So thank you so much for talking about this with me. I actually made a surprisingly good time. I maybe could have spent a little bit longer on some of those techniques we did earlier, so if you'd like to repeat them, let me know. But I am so grateful that we got to look at this together. I'm going to come back to our main page, stop sharing here, and we can talk about this. Be very curious to hear what you all think, and questions, comments, thoughts about what we talked about.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, so just want to encourage everybody. There's a box down at the bottom. There's a raise hand, and there's a Q&A box. So you can either raise your hand if you like, but the Q&A is there, and there's an anonymous. So ask away, and we'll just keep an eye on that and see if anyone has any questions. I definitely was taking some notes.
Oh, good.
Yeah, there was so much along the way to just think about. The one thing that kept coming up for me was about noticing how important it is just to notice that we're in a place where we need some support, right? Like. Everything was kind of, even all the way at the end, he has this group of friends and he's noticing like these are my people. And sometimes our relationships aren't healthy, or they're not helpful, or we don't feel healthy or helpful in them. So as I was listening to you, I was thinking all of these things are clues for us to kind of maybe put our head outside the water and say, do I need help? Or what do I need here?
Yes. That is so important. Thank you for talking about that. Oh, we have a little question.
Yeah,
Great. So we'll talk about that in a second. But I do think that, I think that building healthy relationships is probably the most important thing that we can do while we're here, kind of in general, right? And part of that is knowing, like, are we able to offer to people what we want to receive from them? Are we able to be patient and compassionate and kind and supportive to the people in our orbit? And that doesn't mean we're constantly in a state of always giving to everyone else, because everyone's got ups and downs. But I sometimes find just like coming back to basics and practicing certain skills about communication and listening and being with one another is actually really important. And we can talk about, I have some books and stuff where you guys can follow me on Instagram. No need to, but if you're interested, I talk a lot about that there. But I think it's so important.
I
see a couple questions in the
Q&A. Let's go.
Okay, so the first one says, how can we share this with someone special to us? I'd like to share the techniques as I hope it will help them. Is there a book or something you recommend? I'm looking for a book for a second. Can you speak to that first question about sharing this?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you can watch this on playback. You can go to our website or our YouTube channel, Will Rogers Motion Picture Pioneers Foundation, and our website's wrpioneers.org. We can probably put those somewhere in our next email out. So, but you can definitely watch it again. And yeah, just speaking to that first one, you could also watch this with the person that you want to share this with, because that might be helpful to kind of like create a space where that conversation can come out of. So
yeah, and you might practice some of those tools that I share with you together. You can even go on YouTube and look up progressive muscle relaxation and do it together. A lot of times our bodies actually are more calm when we're doing those things with other people. So if you have people in your life who you want to practice them with, that's a good option. So I just pulled 2 books off of my bookshelf that I recommend to folks. So the first one is called My Grandmother's Hands. It's by this author, Resmaa Menakem. This book is about racialized trauma, especially in the United States. But the reason I'm recommending this to you guys right now is that there is a ton of really practical skills like the ones that I talked about today in this book. There's entire sections just with simple skills, things that are free or really cheap. He's got this really cool one with a little bird that you balance on your finger. Tons and tons of options, just like pages and pages of this. But this is a great book if you're looking for practical skills. And then I have to pitch this book too. This is called Messages, the Communication Skills book. And what I love about this book is that it breaks down how to be a good listener, how to be a good communicator. I had to read this in graduate school when I was training to be a therapist, but it's not that hard of a read. It's pretty easy to read. And I just find it so helpful in terms of communicating and building healthy relationships. So
yeah. It's so smart to get a book or to get some support, because we all think we should know these things. And if we grew up in households that weren't able to communicate in a healthy way, which a lot of people, that is an experience, then you didn't learn. So it's kind of like expecting yourself to learn a foreign language or be able to speak a foreign language without even learning. That's the analogy I like to give, because we never would think, oh, I should be able to speak Russian or French if we don't naturally speak it. So
yes,
to learn it, it's a skill.
And when I remember going to grad school and reading this book and starting to learn, and I was like, wow, I did not know any of this. And I thought I was so smart. And I had so much to learn. So please use your books. I just love recommending books to folks. So
yeah,
those
books are good.
I see a couple
question. Yeah.
So this one says, not sure if this was spoken of. How do you recommend best dealing with severe grief from loss, especially when you're in public? Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for being here. This is such an important question, and it's not something that we touched on, so I'm glad that you asked it. I just want to take a moment to feel with you the pain of being in grief or being in pain in a public space. That is a very hard thing to do when you're like in public and you're having a big emotion and you don't really want to be seen, but you're in a public space. I would think about, when we talk about grief, part of what we talk about is that grief isn't something that goes away. It's something that we learn to live with. So when we lose people or we lose parts of ourselves that we really loved and will miss, that loss will stay with us. I've sometimes seen this imagery of like a box with a ball in it, and there's a little pain button. And when you first are in grief, your box is really small, so your button is getting pushed all the time by that ball. And as you continue to grow and to heal and to have space and time, your box gets bigger. And so sometimes the button gets pressed, but not as often. When you are in public, this might be somewhat simple advice. I don't know, this is like, earth-shattering advice, but I would think about, is there a private space you can retreat to? A bathroom, your car, even like a corner of the store where there's not a lot of people. Is there a person that you can call or text who can talk to you in that moment? Is there someone you can reach out to who might be able to support you, or talk you through or talk you down a little bit from what you're experiencing? I also want to recommend, and I know this is easier said than done, that if possible, letting yourself cry a bit or experience those emotions, because there is something to be said for the release that happens, even chemically in our body when we're crying. And I know we don't always want to do that in public, but if you can give yourself that space to do that, that sometimes can help you to shift your attention back to the present, maybe make your escape when you can, or take your break when you can. But that's a really painful experience. And I wish there were sometimes better answers for stuff like that.
I think that was a good answer about recognizing it's there, naming it, reaching out to any community that you might have. And I would suggest any of the nervous system regulating, right? Like,
I love that.
We can do in public, and people aren't really going to know what we're doing. We can go into a bathroom stall if we really are feeling shy about it, but just kind of touching in with ourselves to let ourselves know we're there.
Yes, I love that.
With ourselves, right? There's another one there for you.
Okay, good. Real fast on the butterfly hug. I get really anxious in doctor's offices. So you can bilateral stimulation. This is a great way, but you can also just have your hands in your pockets and like tap back and forth on your legs if you're trying to be really, really sneaky. And I would do that in like all of my doctor's offices I ever go to because it calms my body down. So just wanted to pop that for you guys. All right, let's take this other question. How do you keep up with the world events and news without letting the attention-grabbing headlines negatively impact you? I want to keep up with what's important. However, the news just reports doom and gloom and creates anxiety. I have noticed my mental health has greatly improved when I stopped watching morning and evening news. However, I don't want to miss something critical. Also, I deleted all social media on my phone and have noticed my mental health, stress, and anxiety greatly improve. Thank you for your help. Okay, love that you have found a couple things that work for you already. Getting off of social media is very helpful for many people. If you don't want to totally get off social media, you can also unfollow anybody who makes you feel bad or who shares stuff that makes you feel bad. Be really, really selective about who gets your attention online is something I recommend. But let's talk about keeping informed without falling into that space of just being caught up by lots of negative headlines. This is very much like how a lot of the news operates. They want clicks, they want listens, they want viewers. And the number one things that motivates people to click or share or watch is making you angry or afraid. These are the emotions that work. I do a lot of social media stuff, so I've learned a lot about how to make content that does well online and goes viral. And always the advice is, if it's controversial, it will do well. So that's part of the way that this works, right? Is it's like specifically pushing buttons to make you angry or upset or afraid. I'm just going to share what I do. And Samantha, I'll be curious if you have thoughts too. I find that consuming news that's like on a TV news is a lot more sensationalized, and there's a lot more like music and emotion, and it's like very big and scary when I see this person talking about watching the news in the morning and at night. I have a couple podcasts that I trust that do little like daily news. There's not a lot of like music and images and scare tactics. It's just like, these are some things that are happening. And so that's what I'll do. Also, reading the news sometimes, having a news organization that you trust and reading instead of watching somebody talk about it can be helpful, because again, a lot of times the talking heads sensationalize it because it keeps people engaged. I also have taken breaks. I will sometimes, if I'm in a place where I'm really concerned about something or I'm feeling really activated or anxious, I will take breaks from the news and say, I'm not going to listen to my podcasts or read this stuff for a week. I'm going to give myself a week off. I have a psychologist who I really like who says, if there's a zombie apocalypse, I'm sure I'll find out about it.
Right.
I hear that piece of wanting to be informed because that does matter actually, but it's okay to
Sure.
take breaks. You don't need to be perpetually, constantly informed at all moments. You can
Yeah.
take breaks too.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. I mean, yes to all of that. And I love that this person is already taking action, right? And that's something that you talked about throughout the webinar. And we know that for mental health, we have to take action. So we're noticing I get really overwhelmed with the news. I'm going to turn down the volume. So this person got rid of their social media and a few other things, which I think that I just wanted to highlight, because I think if everyone here could just do one little thing, you will be surprised. We think it's intuitive. We think we should be happy. We think we should be not anxious. No, the world is set up to make us that way, which is the piece about the news, which is a very good, I like to read the news. That way I can control what I read. It actually would make me probably pretty sick if I were to watch the news. I'm a sensitive person and I think I would way too much.
Same.
So I like to read the news and I like to take breaks. I give myself permission to take breaks. I don't know if I read any research about it, but I would say that is taking a really healthy measure is to just pause.
Yeah, and maybe there's a day of the week where you check in and make sure, okay, is there anything I need to know? And on Wednesdays I watch or I read or whatever. But I do think, or if there's like a person in your community who you trust who can let you know if there's important things happening,
That's a good thing, right?
Yeah,
then there's community there, right?
Yeah, if there's some sort of barrier or buffer you can put up between yourself and the barrage of negative headlines that actually don't even necessarily help you be as informed. They just get you upset and angry, and they're not always as informational. So I hope so.
Yeah, and also it's to that negativity bias, isn't it? Like it's telling us things we're out of control. We're never going to come back from this. It's going to be terrible. So yeah.
I see somebody saying some independent journalists do good news only days as well. And I've seen this on social media. People will say, here's some good things that happened this week. So you can seek that out.
Yeah,
I see another person saying NPR has been good for me. No drama and straightforward information. That's the podcasts I listen to tend to be from that radio station because it's not a lot of like music and headlines. Duh. It's like, okay, this is what's going on.
I think PBS does a good job too.
Yeah.
There as well. This is great. I know we're a little bit over Summer, but I wanted to say one thing about, I had so many notes that we didn't get to, but that's okay. But the piece about gratitude and the piece about exercise, because there's been some research and you all can look it up. Please do. If you really only want to follow what the research is saying, gratitude has been proven to improve our well-being, and exercise. I can't quote the research exactly, but I just saw that it's just as good as medication or even therapy. Like exercise is really key. And there's a lot of reasons to that, but that can help with the overwhelm, I think, as well.
Yeah, and that's where we talked about that, like the foundation of self-care. Like this is the foundation. It's not a cure-all. It doesn't fix everything. But if we can attend to the eating, sleeping, moving, and having fun being with other people, the kind of 4 I prioritize, though, if you can attend to those, a lot of times it's just going to give you a stronger base to underneath, like a higher floor, maybe is the way to think about it.
Yeah, and then going back to our topic, that's the higher floor that we need. The capacity to say, wow, things are happening around us and it's really overwhelming. And if I take care of myself, it gives me an opportunity to kind of hold that and be better off than if I hadn't eaten or I'm not taking care of myself. Because those things really do matter. Once you get into the nitty gritty of it, it's incredible that that we're not kind of taught this at a very young age. Like you need to do these things if you want to have a pretty good life.
Yes.
Right.
Wow.
No.
I completely agree with that, as you know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and then I just wanted, somebody did comment, more outdoor walks, less scrolling. Absolutely. It's so true.
Mhm.
I think we're so used to hearing it, we sometimes turn off, but yeah, you can test it for yourself, and you can also notice there were so many things throughout the webinar, if you go back and watch it, that give us clues to notice when something is off. So like this person who decided, I'm not feeling great, I'm going to reduce my social media and my news content, and they noticed that they felt better. That's really what we can do for ourselves. So yeah, so Summer, wonderful. Thank you
Thank you so
much.
much.
Yeah, we love having you here. We really appreciate it. And for all of you watching, we are Will Rogers Foundation. We are here for those in the film industry, and we are creating community with our intermission program. We really want you to show up and be a part of us. We're here if you have questions. We're here if you have concerns. If you don't know how to take care of yourself, or you need some ideas or support, please feel free to reach out. That's what we're here to do. So, and follow us on Instagram.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me. I was really excited for this topic. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, you did a great job. Thanks so much, Summer. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, bye everyone.